Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've worked the graveyard shift at a small convenience store in a quiet suburb outside Minneapolis for a little over 2 years now. Most nights are uneventful. Just the occasional drunk guy grabbing snacks or someone fueling up on coffee during a long drive. I actually like the calm, and I usually bring a book or watch something on my phone when it's dead slow. That night felt no different at first. It was a Tuesday, just past 1:30 a.m. No traffic outside, no customers in for nearly half an hour. Just me, the low hum of the refrigerator, and some crime podcast playing low behind the counter. I wasn't even paying full attention to it until the bell above the door dinged. He walked in wearing a gray hoodie with the hood pulled tight over a baseball cap, head kind of low like he didn't want to be recognized. That wasn't super weird. People come in looking like that all the time, especially when it's cold. But the thing that caught my eye was how he just stood by the snack aisle, not really looking at anything. At first I figured he was just indecisive. But then 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He hadn't picked anything up, just paced a bit, hands in his pockets, glancing over at me every now and then. I tried not to stare, but my gut started buzzing, like something was off. I kept pretending to clean the counter, but I was fully watching him through the mirrored panels above the register. At some point I heard a soft click I couldn't place at first. I looked up again and realized he had walked over to the front door and did something with the lock. I couldn't see clearly, but I swear I heard him flip it. Nobody ever does that. Customers don't mess with the door. I walked around the counter trying to look casual, like I was going to restock the gum or something near the entrance just to check. When I reached the door and tried to push it open, it didn't budge. That's when my stomach dropped. It was locked from the inside, and I didn't do it. I turned back toward him, trying not to look scared, but my legs felt like they didn't belong to me. He was walking slowly now, heading toward the drink coolers near the counter. Still hadn't picked up a single item. Still no words. I stepped behind the register and reached for the panic button under the ledge, but then I saw his hand shift under his hoodie. That's when I knew. He had something tucked in there. I couldn't tell if it was a gun or a knife, but I wasn't about to find out. He walked up, leaned in just slightly over the counter, and said in the calmest voice I've ever heard, "Don't do anything stupid. Just give me what I want and this ends quiet." I froze. I know that sounds cliche, but I really did. My brain just stopped. I looked right at him and he was staring back, not angry, not shaking, just still. That calm scared me more than if he'd been yelling. I kept one hand near the register drawer and the other out of sight, trying to decide if I should hit the panic button or not. It wasn't a regular button either. It was one of those flat pads you have to press and hold for 3 seconds. 3 seconds felt like a lifetime if he noticed. So I didn't. I just nodded and asked, "Cash?" He didn't answer, just tilted his head like he was waiting to see if I'd follow instructions. I opened the drawer slowly, careful not to make any sudden moves. The money in there wasn't much, maybe a couple $100 at most. I started pulling out the bills, stacking them on the counter. He didn't touch them, just kept his hand under the hoodie watching me. I asked if he wanted coins too, mostly to stall, honestly, and he shook his head. That's when I noticed something that nearly made me pass out. The security camera's red light above the counter wasn't blinking. It was dead, completely off. I don't know how I hadn't noticed earlier. Either it had been out before he came in, or he disabled it when I wasn't looking. He finally reached out with one hand, snatched the stack of bills, and shoved them into his pocket. Then he leaned in closer, and I could smell his breath, like cigarettes and mint gum, and he whispered, "Now stay put, don't call anyone, I'll know if you do." I nodded again, trying to keep my face still, but I could feel my lip trembling. He stared at me for another few seconds, then slowly backed away. I thought he was going to leave. I really did. But instead of walking out the door, he turned and walked down one of the side aisles, like he was browsing again. That's when the real panic set in. He already had the money. Why was he still here? I couldn't see him now, just the tops of the shelves. I stayed behind the counter, barely breathing. I didn't know if I should run to the back office or stay put like he said. What if he had a gun and was waiting for me to move? Every second felt stretched out, like time stopped working properly. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of a metal latch, one of the cooler doors being opened. He was doing something in the back. My mind went to the worst places. What if he was grabbing something to hurt me with? What if this wasn't even about money? I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely stay upright. I reached down again, this time for my phone hidden in my bag under the counter. I didn't even care if he saw me at that point. I just needed help. But as soon as I unlocked the screen and opened the dial pad, I heard footsteps rushing toward the counter. I dropped the phone back into the bag and looked up. He was standing there again, but now he looked different. Nervous, maybe even regretful. He glanced at the door, then back at me, and without saying a word, unlocked it and walked out. Just like that. No threats, no hurry, just walked into the night. I waited a full minute before moving. Then I ran to the back office, locked myself in, and called 911. My voice cracked so many times the dispatcher could barely understand me. Cops arrived within minutes, but of course he was long gone. They reviewed the footage, except the front camera had gone out exactly like I thought. The others caught parts of him, but nothing super helpful. No clear shots of his face. They said it was probably a one-off, just a guy desperate for cash, but I didn't buy that. If it were just about money, why linger? Why play those quiet mind games? I didn't quit immediately, but I never worked another solo night shift again. They offered me different hours after that, and I took them. For weeks, I kept looking over my shoulder, especially in parking lots and when locking up. Every time the doorbell chimed in the store, my chest tightened. I thought maybe he'd come back just to see if I'd followed his instructions, but he never did. Nothing ever came of the investigation. He vanished. No fingerprints, no matches on the partial image they had. It was like he walked in from nowhere and disappeared the same way. The part that still eats at me is how calm he was, that eerie confidence, like he'd done it before, or was planning something worse and changed his mind. Maybe I was supposed to be more than just a witness to a robbery. I'll never know. That night has replayed in my head hundreds of times, and every time I think I've made peace with it, something triggers the memory again. A click of a door lock, a man with his hands in his hoodie, the sound of that cooler door opening. I don't talk about it much anymore, but sometimes, like tonight, I need to put it into words, just to remind myself that it really happened, that I made it out. I've been driving a taxi for a few years now, mostly working the night shift because the tips are better and the traffic is lighter. I've had my share of weird riders, drunk college kids, quiet types, even the occasional creep. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever messed with my head like what happened last winter. I still don't know what that guy wanted or what could have happened if I hadn't made the choice I did. I wasn't even going to post this, honestly. But I can't stop replaying it in my head, and maybe writing it down will help me get some sleep. It was a Thursday night, around 2:30 a.m., and I was parked just off a main street downtown, waiting for a ride. I got a ping for a pickup about 5 minutes away, near one of those old, half-closed strip malls. When I pulled up, there was just this guy standing on the curb. No bags, no phone in hand, just staring straight ahead like he'd been waiting there for hours. I lowered the passenger window and asked if he was the one who called. He didn't answer right away. Then he just opened the back door, got in, and mumbled, "Yeah, that was me." His voice was weirdly calm, flat. I asked where he was headed, and he just said, "Take me north. I'll tell you when to turn." That's already a red flag for any driver. Most people give a full address or at least a street name. But I figured maybe he was just drunk or bad with directions, so I started driving north toward the edge of town. Every once in a while, he'd give me a vague, quiet, "left here," or "keep going." No emotion, no small talk. I even tried to break the ice, asked him if he was getting off work or something. He didn't respond, just silence. I started feeling uneasy, like I was chauffeuring someone who wasn't fully there. About 20 minutes later, we were deep in the industrial part of the city. Old warehouses, abandoned buildings, barely any streetlights. Not a place anyone would go at that hour unless they had a reason. I stopped the car and asked if this was the spot. He didn't move, just stared out the window. After a few seconds, he said something that chilled me. "I used to come here to think, but not anymore." His tone had changed, slower, heavier. Then he turned his head just enough for me to see his face in the rear view. His eyes were off, like he was looking through me, not at me. I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded like I understood and kept my eyes on the rear view mirror. I could feel my pulse picking up. The whole area was dead quiet, no cars, no lights, just the occasional gust of wind rattling old metal signs. I asked again, gently, "Is this where you want to be dropped off?" He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, just enough that I could feel his breath near my ear, and said, "You ever think about how easy it is to disappear out here?" My hands tensed on the steering wheel. I gave a little laugh, tried to act casual, but inside I was already running through every possible way this could go wrong. He leaned back again but didn't open the door. Just sat there, fingers drumming lightly on his knee, looking out into the dark. I didn't move. I didn't even want to breathe too loud. Then he started talking, more like muttering, about things that didn't make sense. He said stuff like, "Some people don't deserve to make it home," and "It gets quiet before things go bad." It was hard to tell if he was talking to me or just thinking out loud. I tried to end it, told him the meter was still running and that if he wanted to stay, I could drop him at a gas station or somewhere safer. He didn't like that. His head snapped toward me and his voice dropped an octave. "You want me to leave so bad?" he asked, dead serious. At that point, I realized I was alone, in a car, with someone who clearly wasn't right, and we were parked in the middle of nowhere. I kept calm, or at least I pretended to be, and said, "No, man, it's just not safe out here this time of night. I can take you wherever you need." He stared at me for a long time. Long enough that I started wondering if he was going to pull something out of his coat. Then he smiled. Not a happy smile, the kind of smile someone makes when they know something you don't. And he said, "You ever pick up someone who didn't want to ride?" I didn't answer. My heart was racing. I just put the car back in drive and slowly pulled forward, hoping he'd just tell me where to go or get out once we hit a main road. But as I drove, he started talking again, calmly, almost like he was reminiscing. He told me about a guy he once taught a lesson to because he disrespected him. He described it in detail, how dark it was, how nobody ever found out. He kept saying, "People don't pay attention at night. They don't hear things they don't want to." I was sweating through my shirt by then. Every part of me was screaming to get this guy out of the car without making him snap. I took the next turn onto a more lit-up road, hoping that just being closer to civilization would shift the energy. I spotted a 24-hour gas station up ahead and slowed down, pretending to check my GPS. I told him I needed to refuel, just trying to come up with a reason to stop the car without raising suspicion. He didn't say anything at first. Then, as we pulled into the station, he muttered, "Smart move." I didn't know if he was being sarcastic or serious, and honestly, I didn't care. I parked, left the engine running, and told him I'd be back in a second. My legs were trembling when I got out. I walked into the store like everything was fine, but I went straight to the counter and told the clerk there was a guy in my car who was scaring the hell out of me. I asked if I could call the cops from there. The clerk kind of froze but then nodded and handed me his phone. As I was dialing, I looked outside, and the car was empty, passenger door wide open. No sign of him anywhere. I ran outside, looked around the lot, even circled the building. Nothing, just gone. I swear it couldn't have been more than a minute. The cops came maybe 10 minutes later. I explained everything. described the guy, the route, even showed them the GPS history. They did a quick search of the area but didn't find anything. One officer asked if I was sure I didn't imagine some of it, maybe stress or fatigue. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I didn't make any of that up. They filed a report, took my statement, and told me to take the rest of the night off. I didn't argue. I drove straight home, parked my car, and sat in the dark for an hour before I could even go inside. I still think about that ride sometimes, about what might have happened if I hadn't stopped at that gas station. I don't know if he was planning something or just trying to mess with me. What gets me the most is how he disappeared so fast, like he was never really there. But I know he was. I remember his face. I remember his voice. And sometimes, when I'm driving past that same area, I catch myself checking the mirrors a little more than usual, just in case. I've been working the night shift at this assisted living facility in Pennsylvania for about 6 years now. It's the kind of place with a steady rhythm. Dim halls, the hum of oxygen machines, the occasional nurse's cart squeaking by. I usually don't mind the overnight hours. It's quieter, easier in some ways, and I've always felt a weird sense of peace being the one keeping watch while everyone else sleeps. But what happened last winter changed how I feel about this place forever. And no matter how many times I replay it in my head, I still can't explain it, or forget it. That night started like any other. I clocked in at 10 p.m., grabbed my clipboard and checked on the usual things: vitals, meds, notes from the evening shift. Around 1 a.m., I was making my second round when I noticed the hallway near the back laundry room felt off. The air was colder than usual, not like AC, just cold. I passed by the back door and saw it wasn't shut all the way, just slightly ajar. I remember staring at it for a second, trying to remember if maintenance had been out that day or if anyone had stepped out for a smoke. But no one had. I pulled it shut, locked it, and stood there for a bit, just listening. That's when I saw the muddy footprints. They weren't from one of our residents, and these were larger, like from boots. And they weren't dry either. It looked fresh, damp. They started right at the back door and trailed down the hallway toward the east wing, where most of our independent residents stayed. I followed them slowly, heart thumping harder with every step. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I also knew for a fact no one was supposed to be coming in or out at that time. It was just me and one overnight nurse on the other side of the building. I considered texting her, but I didn't want to cause panic unless I was sure. As I kept walking, I heard something, a soft sound like the shuffle of movement, coming from room 209. That room had been empty for over a week. The last resident had passed away, and the family hadn't cleared out the belongings yet. I froze. I didn't want to believe someone was in there, but that sound wasn't mechanical. It wasn't a pipe or the building settling. It sounded like someone was trying to move around quietly. I leaned slightly toward the door, not too close, just enough to listen. And that's when the sound stopped, completely. Not a creak, not a breath, just dead silence. I backed away from that door real slow and tried to keep my breathing under control. There were no cameras in that wing, budget cuts, and I didn't have a radio on me, just my phone. I texted the other nurse, Jenna, just a quick, "You hear anything near 209? She didn't answer. I remember looking down the hallway and realizing the footprints didn't end at that room. They kept going. I followed them just a little further, and that's when I noticed the next weird thing. One of the hallway lights was out, but it had been working earlier. That entire stretch suddenly looked darker, like the kind of dark where your brain starts filling in shapes that might not be there. I turned around to head back toward the main hallway, and that's when I heard another sound, a different one this time, like a soft thud, from behind me. Not in the same room as before, closer now, maybe 2 doors down. My stomach dropped. I knew at that point this wasn't my imagination. I didn't want to start yelling and wake the residents, but I also couldn't just keep creeping around in silence. I texted Jenna again, this time with, I think someone's inside. I'm serious. Still no response. I started to wonder if something had happened to her too. I hadn't seen her since before I found the door open. I made my way toward the staff room where our little emergency kit was. Flashlight, pepper spray, a spare key set. I kept checking over my shoulder the whole way. Nothing, not a single sound now. It felt like the building was holding its breath. When I got to the room, the door was wide open. That room is always kept shut. It's not locked, but we never leave it open. I stepped inside quickly, locked it behind me, and grabbed the spray and flashlight. I tried calling Jenna at that point, straight up dialing her number. It rang once, then cut. No voicemail, no nothing. That's when I really started to panic. I didn't want to leave the residence alone, but I also didn't know what I was dealing with. I peeked out the little wired glass window on the door, and my blood ran cold. Someone was walking slowly past the hallway. I couldn't see their face, and they were wearing a hoodie pulled tight, hands in their pockets, head slightly down. Not a resident. No one here moves like that. No walker, no limp, no hesitation. Just slow, steady steps. I stayed crouched behind the door, barely breathing. Whoever it was didn't look around. Just kept walking, like they were looking for something, or someone. After a few minutes that felt like hours, I eased the door open just enough to peek again. The hallway was empty. I didn't hear footsteps anymore, no voices, nothing. I decided I couldn't just hide. I needed to make sure the residents were safe. I walked toward the nearest occupied room, Mrs. Green's. She's 87, mostly deaf, and sleeps with her TV on low volume. But when I got to her door, I saw something that still messes with my head. Her door was cracked open, she always keeps it shut, and the TV was off. The room was dark, and I swear I saw movement inside. I called her name softly. Nothing. I pushed the door open and flipped the light on. She was in bed, completely fine. Asleep. But the window on the far side of the room was wide open, and her slippers were turned sideways on the floor like someone had just stepped out of them. I closed the window, checked on her again, and backed out. The air in the hallway felt different now, heavier somehow. I went to 3 more rooms. All the residents were okay, but I kept noticing little things that didn't add up. A glass of water knocked over, a call light blinking even though no one had pressed it, a chair slightly moved away from the table where I'd just seen it earlier. I didn't see the figure again, but I kept feeling like someone was behind me, just around the corner. I can't explain it, but I've never felt watched like that before. Not in a creepy imagination way, in a very real, very physical sense. Around 4 a.m., I found Jenna. She was sitting in the main break room with her back to the door, earbuds in, head down on the table. I nearly screamed. She said she never got my messages, claimed her phone died around midnight, and she had been on her break ever since. I don't know if I believe her or not. She looked tired, but normal. Nothing about her seemed off. I didn't say much. I just nodded and went back to checking the rest of the wing. When I returned to the back hallway, all the muddy footprints were gone. The floor looked clean, like it had been wiped down. But no one had done rounds or mopped since the evening shift. I know because that's my job. I handle that wing. I wrote a report, but nothing came of it. No signs of forced entry. The cameras in that section? Still broken. Maintenance never found anything unusual. The doors were all locked during morning rounds. I even double-checked the visitor log for anything suspicious. Nothing. That night never officially happened. But I know what I saw, and I know what I felt. To this day, I still work the night shift, but I never walk those back halls alone anymore. And every time I pass room 209, I make sure the door is shut tight, even though no one's used that room since. I work as an overnight security guard for a massive shopping complex just outside of Phoenix. It's one of those open-air plazas with a grocery store, gym, pharmacy, and a bunch of empty retail spaces that have been sitting dead since the pandemic. Most nights are boring, just driving around in loops or walking the perimeter with a flashlight. I usually keep a podcast playing in one ear to stay awake. But what happened last Thursday still messes with my head. I haven't told anyone at work because I don't even know how to explain it without sounding paranoid, or worse, like I screwed up. But I know what I saw, and I know how close I was to something much worse. It started about a week before the incident. There was this dark gray sedan that I kept seeing parked in the far back corner of the lot, way beyond the last row of lights. The first time I noticed it, I figured someone was just sleeping in their car. Happens more than you'd think. But what struck me as odd was that it was always in the exact same spot, tucked in by this broken lamppost near a line of dumpsters, facing away from the main lot. I'd drive by during my 2 a.m. sweep, and it would be there, lights off, no movement. Sometimes the windows were fogged, sometimes not, but it never moved. After 3 nights in a row of seeing it there, I finally wrote it in my log. Company policy says I'm supposed to approach any suspicious vehicles, but truth is, we usually don't, unless there's clear reason. No one likes waking up some pissed-off guy sleeping in his car with God knows what on the seat next to him. But something about this one just didn't sit right. I'd circle wide around it in the golf cart, and even from 50 feet away, I got that tight feeling in my stomach, like the air changed, like something was off, but I couldn't name it. On the 4th night, I decided I was going to take a closer look. I parked the cart a few aisles away and walked the rest on foot, keeping my flashlight low so it wouldn't reflect off the windows. The car was definitely occupied. I could see the outline of someone in the driver's seat, slouched back, head tilted weird. But the thing that made me stop in my tracks was what I saw on the dashboard. There was this cheap-looking camcorder aimed straight out the front windshield. It had a little red light blinking. That's when I noticed a folded hoodie on the passenger seat, a roll of duct tape beside it, and what looked like a pair of rubber gloves on the dash. I took a step back, immediately regretting getting so close. My gut was screaming at me to walk away and call it in, but I just froze there, staring through the windshield like an idiot. I think part of me was still trying to rationalize it. Maybe someone worked for a cleaning service or something. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. This wasn't someone sleeping off a long shift. This setup looked intentional. It looked like someone was planning something. I reached for my phone to take a photo when I suddenly heard a car engine in the distance. Headlights turned into the lot from the opposite side. I ducked behind one of those short concrete parking lot barriers and watched as another car, an old white Honda, pulled up right behind the gray sedan. The driver didn't get out at first. He just sat there for a second, engine idling. Then the lights shut off. I don't know what I expected, but when the door opened and he stepped out, the guy looked completely ordinary. Jeans, dark jacket, baseball cap. But the way he moved, quick, like he knew exactly what he was doing, set every nerve on fire. He walked straight to the sedan, opened the trunk, and started unloading something from the back seat of his own car. I couldn't see what it was. I knew I had to say something. It was now or never. I stood up slowly, trying not to startle him, and called out something dumb like, "Hey, this is private property, sir." My voice cracked. He turned so fast it startled me. The look on his face, it wasn't confusion or surprise. It was like I had just ruined something for him. No fear, just fury. He didn't say a word at first. He just stared, like sizing me up, deciding what to do next. Then he took a step toward me, slow and deliberate. I remember how his left hand went behind his back. I backed up instinctively and reached for the little can of pepper spray they give us, knowing damn well it probably wouldn't be enough. "You need to leave now," I said, trying to keep my voice firm. But it sounded weak even to me. That's when he finally spoke. He said, "This isn't your business." Just that. Cold. Flat. No emotion behind it. Then he took another step forward, and that's when I saw the glint of metal. I didn't wait. I turned and ran full speed toward the golf cart. Didn't even look back. I heard his footsteps behind me for a few seconds, then nothing. Just silence. I jumped into the cart and floored it, which isn't saying much because those things barely go faster than a jog. I radioed it in, breathless, stumbling over my words, but dispatch got the message. By the time I made it to the front of the complex where the cameras and better lighting are, I couldn't see him anymore. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting him to come sprinting out of the dark with something in his hand. I stayed in the lit area until the cops arrived about 10 minutes later. It felt like an hour. I was shaking so bad I could barely talk straight. When they finally searched both vehicles, the guy was long gone, but the gray sedan was still there, trunk wide open. What they found inside still makes my skin crawl. Zip ties, rope, a small shovel, a crowbar, and a burner phone. There was also a duffel bag with multiple license plates, but no ID, nothing that could tie the car to a name. The plates were all reported stolen. The car itself had no registration, and its VIN number was scratched off. They impounded both vehicles and started an investigation, but I never heard a word back about it after that night. For the next few shifts, I kept checking over my shoulder. I parked closer to the well-lit areas and refused to patrol the back lot alone. I even told my manager I wouldn't do it without backup. They didn't argue. A few days later, a new guy was assigned to the overnight with me. I asked him if he knew anything about the car or if the cops said who that guy was. He just shrugged and said they were treating it as suspicious activity with no current leads. Basically, that meant no one had been arrested and the guy could still be out there, still watching, still waiting for the right moment. And that's the part that messes with me the most. Whoever he was, he knew what he was doing. He wasn't some junkie sleeping it off. He had a setup, a plan, and he almost caught me off guard. I still replay it in my head sometimes. What if I hadn't spotted the car that night? What if I'd gotten too close before realizing he was behind me? What if I didn't run fast enough? I haven't seen that car again. But every now and then I find myself staring at the edge of that lot, past the broken lamp, wondering if he'll ever come back. Or worse, if he already has. I work the night shift at a small nursing home out in rural Iowa. It's one of those quiet places you don't even see from the main road, tucked behind some trees, one floor only, maybe 20 rooms total. Most nights are slow. The residents sleep early, and apart from checking vitals or responding to the occasional bed alarm, I'm usually alone with my thoughts and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. I'd never really been scared working there. It's peaceful in a way. Until one particular night that changed everything, and I still can't explain it. It started with little things. Doors that should have been locked were somehow open during my rounds. I'm not talking wide open, just unlatched, like someone had quietly turned the handle and let it rest without pulling it shut. At first, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was rushing through the rounds and just thought I had locked them. I double-checked the log, convinced I wasn't losing it. I even started writing tiny check marks on my glove every time I locked a room, just to keep track. But the next round? Same thing. A couple of doors were ajar again. That same night, one of our residents, Mr. Clayton, called me into his room around 3:15 a.m. He's 84, very sharp for his age. Still reads the newspaper and watches the news every night. He asked me if there was a new male staff member working nights. I told him no, it was just me until 6 a.m. He looked at me dead serious and said, "Then who was the man I saw standing in the hallway outside my door an hour ago?" I wanted to laugh it off, thinking maybe he dreamed it or mistook a shadow, but something about his face told me he wasn't messing around. His eyes were focused, like he knew exactly what he saw. I did another walk through, slower this time. All the exit doors were locked. No alarms had been triggered. I checked the storage rooms, the back office, even the laundry room. Nothing seemed out of place, but I couldn't shake the tension in my chest. Something just felt wrong, like I was being watched, even though I couldn't see anyone. I stood still in the center of the hallway for a minute, listening. There was a weird stillness in the air, heavier than usual. Then I heard a soft creak behind me, like a footstep on the tile. I turned fast. Nothing there. At that point, I went straight back to the nurse's station and pulled up the security feed. We only have 4 cameras in the building, One at the front entrance, one by the back door, and two covering the main hallways. I scrubbed through the past hour of footage, expecting it to be empty. But then I saw it. A blurry shape passing across the far end of the east hallway. No face, no details, just a figure walking calmly toward the patient rooms. No one had entered or exited the building according to the front and back cameras. It didn't make sense. The doors lock automatically. There's no way in unless you have a key card, and the only working night cards are mine and the director's. I paused the video and stared at the frame. The figure was tall, wearing dark clothes, almost blending into the shadows. It didn't look like any of our residents, and no staff member dresses like that. I checked the time code, the exact minute Mr. Clayton had said he saw someone. I didn't know what to do. Call the cops and risk getting laughed at if no one was actually inside? Or wait and maybe put the residents at risk if this guy was still in here? I decided to do one more sweep of the building, this time with my phone camera recording. I didn't tell myself it was brave. Honestly, I was just scared someone would get hurt if I didn't move. I went slowly, starting from the east wing where the figure was last seen. Every light felt dimmer than usual. I swear I could hear my own heartbeat over my footsteps. When I turned the corner past room 14, I froze. At the far end of the hallway, someone was standing there. I could barely make him out, but it wasn't a shadow or my imagination. He was real. Just standing there, facing the doors to the resident rooms, not moving. I whispered, "Hello?" and took one step forward. He didn't turn around. He didn't even flinch. I backed up slowly and ducked into the med closet, heart racing so hard I thought I might pass out. I stayed in there for maybe 5 minutes, texting my supervisor over and over. No answer. I called the on-call line twice. No response. I didn't want to make noise, but I peeked through the crack in the door, phone still recording. The hallway was empty, completely. I ran out and checked every room down that hall. All the residents were sound asleep. Their doors were shut. Some of them were locked again, doors I hadn't touched since the last round. That's when I really started to panic. Either I was losing my mind, or someone was playing games with me. I went back to the security feed and rewound again, hoping maybe I just misread something. But when I scrubbed through the hallway camera this time, the part where I saw the figure earlier, it was gone. Just gone. The recording jumped slightly, like a second was skipped, and the hallway was empty the whole time. I checked the system logs. No errors, no power cuts. No one accessed the camera system but me. At this point, I honestly started to feel sick. Either something really messed up was going on, or I was seriously losing my grip. And I don't say that lightly. Right before the shift ended, one of the residents rang their call button. A sweet lady named Darlene. She just wanted to talk. She said she couldn't sleep because she heard a man breathing outside her room. I asked if she saw anyone. She shook her head and said no, but she knew what she heard. I didn't tell her anything, of course. I just sat with her for a bit until she dozed off again. I checked her door, locked from the inside. Everything seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the thought that he had been standing there again, right outside her room, and I was just a few feet away, not even realizing it. By morning, I was exhausted and pretty shaken. I wrote up a report, kept it as factual as I could without sounding insane. I even left out some stuff, like the doors relocking or the missing footage, because I didn't want to risk getting pulled for a psych eval or something. The daytime nurse showed up, and I didn't say much to her besides the basics. I left before the director came in, and I haven't worked another night shift there since. I asked to switch to evenings. They didn't push back. I think they knew something was off too, even if no one talks about it. What still haunts me is how calm he was. He didn't run, didn't try to hide, like he belonged there, like he'd done it before. Maybe still does. And even now, I sometimes wonder if those residents and the ones who say they hear footsteps or see someone in the dark, maybe they aren't confused at all. Maybe they've just been seeing what I saw. And whatever it was, it never left. I've been working overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse just outside of Columbus, Ohio for almost a year now. It's one of those massive facilities that never really sleeps. Trucks come and go at all hours, but during the late shift, things quiet down a lot between deliveries. I'm usually alone in my section, which covers 2 full aisles of storage. The space is huge, echoey, and filled with rows of towering shelves stacked with boxes. I never thought of it as creepy before, but after what happened last Thursday night, I haven't been able to walk into that place without looking over my shoulder every few seconds. That night started off normal. I clocked in at 10 p.m., did the usual equipment check, and started scanning inventory near loading dock 3. Around 1 a.m., I took a quick break and went to the far side of the warehouse to grab a drink from the vending machines. That's when I noticed something off. A few boxes in aisle 14 were pushed out of place, not just shifted slightly, but like they'd been pulled down halfway and then put back carelessly. At first I thought maybe one of the day shift workers left things messy, but that aisle wasn't scheduled for any activity until Monday. No pickers, no forklifts. Nothing should have been touched. I remember standing there for a minute, just staring at the boxes and trying to decide if I was being paranoid or if someone had actually been there. I checked the scanner. No recent entries for that zone. I didn't hear anything at first, but then I caught a faint sound, almost like something being dragged lightly across the floor. It came from further down the aisle, just out of view past a row of stacked pallets. It wasn't loud, but it wasn't the kind of sound the building naturally makes either. My stomach sank a bit, and I thought, okay, maybe it's a raccoon or something. I grabbed a flashlight from the supply wall and decided to check it out. The moment I turned into the next aisle, I felt it. That weird gut-level feeling like someone's watching you. I moved slowly, sweeping the beam of the flashlight along the shelves, checking for anything out of place. About halfway through, I found a half-empty water bottle tucked behind a crate, then a wrapper from an energy bar. I just froze. This stuff hadn't been there an hour ago, and there was no reason for it to be there at all. That's when it clicked. Someone had been living in here, not just passing through, hiding. I didn't see anyone yet, but everything in me screamed that I wasn't alone. I backed away slowly, trying not to make noise. My first instinct was to call security, but my phone had 0 signal inside the warehouse, something that always annoyed me, but never felt like a real problem until right then. The landline at the front office was all the way across the building, and I didn't want to turn my back or run and end up getting followed. So I stayed quiet and started moving toward the center aisle where I knew there was a ladder I could climb for a better view. My hands were already shaking, and I remember how the flashlight started to tremble with me, casting weird, moving shadows along the racks. I got up the ladder and crouched near the top shelf, using the high ground to scan both directions. That's when I saw him, just for a second. A man darted between aisles about 50 feet away, wearing a dark hoodie and what looked like cargo pants. He wasn't sprinting, just moving fast and low, like he knew how to stay hidden. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I tried yelling out, something dumb like, "Hey, I see you." But my voice came out weak and shaky. He didn't answer. He didn't even look back, just kept slipping between rows like he knew the place better than me. I climbed back down, still gripping the flashlight like a weapon, and tried to keep my breathing steady. The whole warehouse felt wrong now. Too quiet, too still. Every little creak sounded deliberate. I made my way toward the interior maintenance room where I knew there was a panel with an emergency alarm. But when I got there, the door was slightly open, and it's always supposed to be locked. That's when I realized the panel had been pried open and the wires were cut. My stomach flipped. This guy had planned for that. He knew exactly what he was doing. At that point, I panicked. I stopped thinking logically and just started trying to get out. I ran back toward the receiving bay, hoping one of the emergency exits would trigger the alarm if I opened it. But every single one had been chained shut from the inside. Chains I'd never seen before. I couldn't even figure out how he managed to do it without anyone noticing. That's when I understood I was trapped. Not by accident. Someone wanted to keep me inside that building. And whoever he was, he'd already been living in there, probably watching us for days, maybe longer. I tried not to break down, but I was shaking so bad I had to sit on the floor behind a stack of pallets just to keep myself from passing out. I didn't want to make a sound. I didn't even want to breathe too loud. I kept the flashlight off and waited, hoping he'd think I found a way out. But after maybe 10 minutes of silence, I heard slow footsteps coming down the aisle. Steady, unhurried. Like he wasn't looking for me in a panic. Like he already knew where I was. I covered my mouth and tried not to cry. I could hear him pause every few steps like he was listening. I swear I even heard him breathing. I stayed hidden, completely still, for what felt like forever. Eventually, the footsteps faded, and I used that chance to crawl out toward the nearest forklift and wedge myself behind the engine compartment. It reeked of oil, and I could barely fit, but I didn't care. I just needed something solid between me and him. I stayed there for hours, or at least it felt like hours. At one point, I thought I saw his shadow pass across the opposite wall, but I didn't move. I wouldn't have moved if the place caught fire. That's how scared I was. I didn't even try to scream anymore. I knew no one would hear it. At some point, I think it was almost sunrise, I heard the main bay door start rolling open. I thought it might be him coming back in, but then I heard the beeping of the morning crew's first truck backing up. I didn't even wait. I jumped out, ran straight for the door, and nearly tackled one of the new guys walking in. I tried explaining everything, but my voice was hoarse and my thoughts were scrambled. The supervisor called the police and they did a full sweep of the warehouse, but they didn't find anyone. Not a single trace. The food wrappers were gone. The water bottle. Even the wires at the panel looked like they'd never been touched. They said I probably imagined it, or maybe I saw a thief who got scared and ran. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. Someone was living in that warehouse, and he knew the building better than any of us. He knew how to move, where to hide, how to cut the alarms. And worst of all, he knew how to disappear. I still work there. I can't afford not to. But I bring a pocket knife now, and I check every aisle before I clock in. I don't think he's gone. I think he just decided not to do anything that night, and I have no idea why. I don't really talk about this night much, mostly because people either brush it off or give me that half smile like I'm exaggerating. But I swear, this happened exactly how I'm about to tell it. My name's Elise. Back in 2021, I was a sophomore in college, living on campus during the day, and working night shifts at a 24-hour gas station just off Route 19, a pretty isolated stretch of road mostly used by long-haul truckers. The pay sucked, but it covered my rent and groceries, and I liked that it was usually quiet. Too quiet, actually. Most nights after 11 p.m., I'd go hours without a single customer. The buzz of the overhead lights and the hum of the fridge coolers became the soundtrack of my shift. The gas station itself was this tiny box of flickering fluorescent misery. 2 pumps out front, a single door, and big windows that gave you a clear view of the lot, the pumps, and the black void of trees beyond the lights. That's all there was, trees and highway. My routine was solid. I'd bring a book, eat leftover pizza from the back fridge, maybe watch something on my phone behind the counter. There was a wall-mounted landline behind the register, but nobody ever used it except the manager, Gary, who'd call once a week to check inventory. So when it rang one Thursday around 2:30 a.m., I was genuinely startled. I picked up with a dry hello and got nothing but a click. I didn't think much of it at the time, maybe a misdial, but then I started noticing the car, a white Buick Regal, old model with one foggy headlight. It started showing up in the far edge of the parking lot, just outside the reach of the overhead lights. It never parked close, never got gas, never approached the store. It just sat there, engine off, lights out. At first I figured it was a trucker sleeping in his car. Common enough. But this wasn't a one-time thing. It came back the next night, and the next. Always the same car, same spot, same dead silence. Just far enough that I couldn't make out the driver inside. After the third night, I got curious, or maybe anxious. I stepped outside with the trash, pretending not to care, but I could feel the air change the second I crossed the threshold. You ever feel eyes on you, like actual weight? That's exactly what it felt like. I threw the bag in the dumpster and paused, squinting toward the lot. I could just barely make out the outline of a figure behind the wheel. They weren't moving, just sitting there. I stared for maybe 10 seconds, waiting for some reaction. Nothing. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself it was just someone resting. But I started double-checking the locks after that, and I stopped sitting near the front windows. 2 nights later, the phone rang again. This time, the voice on the other end wasn't silent. It was a man. Calm, quiet, but with a weirdly polite tone that made my skin crawl. He said, "You always wear your hair up on Fridays. I like that." "It suits your neck." I froze. I hadn't said a word. I looked down. I was wearing my hair up. I didn't respond. I just hung up, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I locked the front door immediately, even though we technically weren't supposed to. Then I shut off the lights inside, crouched behind the counter, and stayed there for the next hour, listening to every tiny sound like it might be a footstep. I didn't tell Gary. I didn't want to risk losing the job. It was hard enough to find night shifts that didn't interfere with classes, and this place was easy money, until it wasn't. I started carrying a box cutter in my pocket. I know it sounds dumb, but it made me feel a little less helpless. I also started keeping a mini flashlight and pepper spray behind the register. I even angled one of the security mirrors to see the front door better from where I sat. But the worst part wasn't the calls. It was how he knew. He described things only someone watching me could know, like when I dropped a bag of chips and kicked it under the counter without picking it up, or how I always eat the blueberry Pop-Tarts from the second shelf, even though they're technically expired. The Buick kept showing up. Some nights it wasn't there, which somehow made it worse. Like maybe he was closer, maybe already inside. The lights in the back of the store were motion sensor, and one night around 3:40 a.m. I saw them flicker on through the security monitor. Just once, for a split second. I checked the back room immediately, heart in my throat, box cutter in hand. Nothing. No one. But the smell in there was different, not bad, just off. Like rust and plastic, maybe. I couldn't explain it, but it was enough to keep me on edge for the rest of my shift. The worst night started like any other. I was refilling the soda fridge when the bell above the front door chimed. I hadn't heard a car pull up. My stomach dropped. I stood up and saw a man at the counter, mid-40s maybe, scruffy beard, baseball cap pulled low. He smiled in this weird, overly friendly way, the kind people use when they're trying too hard to look normal. He bought a pack of gum and a bottle of water. As I rang him up, he said, "You should really stop drinking that expired milk. Doesn't sit well in your stomach, does it?" I felt the blood drain from my face. I never told anyone about the expired chocolate milk I drank 2 nights ago that gave me cramps. Not one soul. I didn't say anything. I just handed him his change and forced a smile so tight it made my cheeks ache. He walked out slowly, like he was waiting for me to react, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, I locked it, pulled the blinds, and went straight to the security system screen. But of course, the cameras out front had been acting up all week. Static. Nothing recorded. I checked the timestamp, 3:12 a.m. I wrote it down, just in case. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. I kept thinking about that moment, his voice, that smile. He wanted me to know it was him. The next shift, I begged Gary to let me work with someone else, even offered to take less pay if I could get a partner at night. He kind of laughed it off, said I was probably just spooking myself watching too many crime shows. I wanted to scream at him, but I kept my cool. That night I brought my friend Heather with me. She hung out behind the counter while I worked, and I swear, it was the first night in weeks that the Buick didn't show up. No weird calls, no strange customers. Just a normal, dead boring shift. I started to think maybe I was losing it. Paranoia, maybe, stress. Then the next night came. Heather couldn't come with me, so I was alone again. Around 2:45 a.m., the phone rang. I didn't pick up. It rang 5 times, then stopped. 30 seconds later, the lights flickered. Not like a power outage, more like someone had messed with the breaker. I stood perfectly still. Then the knock came. Not at the front door, at the back door, the employee entrance. The one only staff had keys for. I didn't breathe. I reached for the flashlight, held the box cutter so tight my fingers ached. I whispered, "Hello?" instantly regretting it. No response, just silence. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. Then, the knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Not banging, not frantic, just steady, almost patient. I backed away, slipped behind the register, and called 911 from the store phone. I told the dispatcher someone was trying to get in through the back and that I was alone. She stayed on the line with me, her voice calm but direct. "Stay inside. Officers are on the way. Don't engage." I swear I heard footsteps circling the outside. When the cops finally arrived, lights flashing, sirens off, there was no one there. No car, no footprints, just a single bottle of water on the back step, the same brand the man had bought 2 nights earlier. After that night, I refused to work alone again. Gary was pissed at first, but once the police came by to follow up, asking if we had surveillance footage or if anyone else had seen the guy, he started taking me seriously. Of course, the cameras were useless, still just static. The officers said they'd keep an eye on the area, but out there in the middle of nowhere, they admitted there wasn't much they could do unless he came back or actually broke in. That didn't help me sleep any better. I moved back home for a while and dropped the night shifts entirely. I didn't even tell my parents the full story, just that something happened and I didn't feel safe anymore. They didn't ask questions. I think they saw it in my face. A week later, I got a package at my dorm. No return address. Inside was a single blueberry Pop-Tart, the same kind I always grabbed from the back shelf, the expired ones. I sat on my bed staring at it for a long time. No note, no threats. Just that. I never told anyone about that part, not even Heather. I threw it away, deleted the security app from my phone, and tried to pretend like it was over. I changed my phone number, got a new job at the campus library. It's been 2 years now, and nothing's happened since. But I still don't park near the tree line, I still don't eat Pop-Tarts, and I still jump when the phone rings after midnight. To this day, I don't know who he was. Maybe a drifter, maybe someone who saw me once and fixated. But whoever he was, he studied me, watched me for weeks, memorized my habits, knew what I ate, how I moved, how I felt. And that's what stays with me. Not the calls, not the car, but the idea that someone could be that close to you, breathing in your routines like oxygen, and you'd have no idea. I think that's why I'm sharing this now. Not for sympathy, and not for attention, but because if you work alone at night, especially in some forgotten corner of the map, pay attention. Even to the quiet, especially to the quiet. You might think you're just being paranoid, but sometimes the feeling that you're being watched, that is your warning. I don't really talk about this much because every time I try, people look at me like I'm being dramatic. But this happened last year, and I still can't walk past a row of dark shelves without getting that feeling in my gut. I used to work the night shift alone at the main public library downtown. We were piloting a 24-hour access model, and I volunteered for the overnight hours since it paid a little more, and I liked the quiet. At least, I used to like the quiet. It started with small things, really small. A chair pulled slightly away from a study table, a return cart not in the spot I left it, a light on in a section I swore I had turned off. I figured maybe the cleaning crew moved things around. Or maybe I just forgot. You second-guess yourself a lot when you're running on bad coffee and it's 2 in the morning. But over time, the weirdness got harder to ignore. Like how a clipboard I left on the information desk vanished completely. or how books I had just shelved were suddenly out of order the next time I walked by. The creepiest part was that it didn't feel like random mess. It felt deliberate, like someone wanted me to notice. I even remember saying out loud once, "Very funny," thinking maybe one of the other staff had snuck in to mess with me, but nobody was there. And then one night I came back from a break and realized my sweater was gone from the back of my chair. Not folded, not moved, gone. I searched everywhere, even in Lost and Found. I don't know why, but that moment shook me more than anything else so far. It felt personal. I talked to my manager the next morning. She suggested maybe someone wandered in during my smoke break and took it, but that didn't make sense. The doors were keycard entry only after midnight, and I always locked them before stepping out. That's when I asked if we could check the cameras. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. I just wanted some kind of explanation so I could stop feeling crazy. But what we saw made my blood run cold. The footage showed me walking away from the front desk and exiting through the staff door for my break. About 30 seconds later, from the far end of the non-fiction aisle, a man stepped into frame. He had been standing there motionless in the shadows, just outside the camera's view, watching. He moved slowly, deliberately, straight toward the desk. I watched myself vanish from view as he casually leaned over my chair, picked up my sweater, and disappeared into the shelves again, all in complete silence. I felt sick. I kept asking how he even got in, and nobody had an answer. There had been no entries logged on the access system. None of the staff recognized him. We called the police, but they said unless we had proof he broke in or threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. They made a report and said to call again if anything escalated. That was it. I didn't sleep the rest of the day. I just kept replaying that moment where he steps out from the darkness like he'd been standing there forever. Like he knew the cameras wouldn't catch him until I was gone. I started keeping the lights on in every section, even the ones I wasn't using. I carried a box cutter in my pocket, which I know sounds paranoid, but I just didn't feel safe anymore. I even started checking every aisle before settling in at the desk. For a couple nights, nothing happened. I almost let myself believe it was over. But on Friday, I found a library card on my desk. Not mine. Not from our system. Just a blank white card with a barcode and no name. It hadn't been there when I arrived, and nobody had signed in that night. I checked twice. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't random. Someone was in the building with me, and they were playing with me. Watching me. I tried to convince myself it was just leftover from a daytime patron, or maybe dropped by a courier. But that card was placed right in the center of the desk, facing me, like a calling card. I didn't tell anyone. I was scared that if I made more noise, it would get worse. So I stayed alert. I kept the lights on, I kept my phone unlocked and within reach, and I prayed that whatever this was would stop before it got any closer. The following night was the worst. Everything felt off from the start. The air was heavier somehow. I kept hearing faint creaks like footsteps on the upper level, but every time I checked, it was empty. Around 3 a.m., I was shelving a cart of returns in the back near the biographies when I heard the faint sound of something falling. Not crashing, just a soft clink like metal hitting tile. I froze. I didn't move for what felt like minutes. Then I slowly pushed the cart forward, turned the corner, and there it was. My box cutter. On the ground. Open. I had left it on the desk. I didn't even hear anyone approach. I didn't hear them leave. But that meant whoever it was had been that close to me without making a sound. I didn't think, I just ran. I grabbed my keys, slammed the staff door shut, and locked myself in the back office. I called 911 with shaking hands and kept whispering that someone was inside, that I was alone, that I didn't feel safe. The dispatcher kept telling me to stay on the line. I was crouched under the desk, trying not to breathe too loud, listening for any movement. The police came in fast, like less than 10 minutes. They swept the entire building while I stayed locked in the office. They didn't find anyone. Nothing was broken. No signs of forced entry. But the box cutter was real. The library card was real. And the footage from earlier that week showed that man, someone who had clearly been hiding, maybe for hours, just waiting. They took it seriously after that, installed new locks, brought in extra staff for overnight. But I never went back. I told them I was done with night shifts. I didn't even give 2 weeks' notice. I just couldn't do it. To this day, I don't know who he was or how long he'd been coming in. Maybe he had access somehow. Maybe he never left and just found places to hide between shifts. All I know is that it wasn't just a random break-in. It was someone who had been watching me for a long time. Someone who waited until I let my guard down. And what scares me the most is, he never tried to hurt me. He didn't say a word. He just stood there like he was waiting for the right moment. But for what? I'll never know.